Hello and welcome to the Fellowship Phase, an Adventures in Middle-earth podcast. I'm Josh, and that's Callum. And once again, that's Scott. And we're going to give you inside information on how to find your own path through Tolkien's world.
So it ends as I guessed it would, his thought said, even as it fluttered away, and it laughed a little within him as it fled. Things are not going to end well for you. You've known this for most of your life. Although you don't quite understand why, it may just be a gut feeling, or perhaps you took some prophetic dream to heart and assume that you're going to be denied a happy ending in life. You just soldier on as best you can before the inevitable happens, hoping that your actions will at least make you worth remembering in the songs and tales now being written. Hello, Scott and Josh.
Hello, Josh and Callum.
Hello, Scott and Callum.
Great, we all said our names okay.
That was a very evocative start. I feel this is a serious, heavy start to this episode. Doomed to die.
Yep.
Yeah.
Wow, sorry, I've really brought the mood down pretty early on. It's...
So long foretold, twice foreshadowed in Cliffhangers. And it's funny because we're recording these 3 episodes back to back, but they'll be released 2 weeks apart. So it's essentially a month since the first part of this. So sorry. So Doomed to Die. So Karhu, Scott.
Yes.
Was your background you chose for him was Doomed to Die. Can you talk us a little bit through maybe why you chose that and what it is?
I feel like we're going to say Doomed to Die far more than anyone ever has.
Well, that's the name of the class.
Do you just say D to D?
D to D.
Which is different from D and D.
Yes.
It's D and D.
D to D.
Oh dear. Yes, creating Karhu, as I said in a previous episode, this is my favourite part of the whole book, the backgrounds. I did read through all of them. This is the only thing that I did actually read through all the options because I think they're all really interesting.
Yeah.
And it inspires thoughts of so many stories you could tell with characters. But thinking of playing a Slayer, and similarly-ish, I think, to you, when you talked about Theodric, this is my first character.
Yeah.
He's going to die.
Yeah.
And I'll roll somebody better next time. That was my thought process. And yeah, I'd always built him and played him for quite a long period that he was meant to die.
Yeah, you certainly tried.
I did. I threw him into many situations with glee abandon. And none of it worked. He's still alive. But I just thought, for someone who has a fairly dark backstory, I mean, for all the campaigns that we've played now, it's not a surprise. You've got to know me pretty well now. That playing a Slayer who is so obsessed with battle, it makes sense that part of the reason they're doing this is that they are almost inviting death. They're actively seeking it. And that, as soon as that thought entered my head about who Karhu was, I none of the other backgrounds made any sense to me. That was the one that really cemented who he was and his story in my head.
So at what stage of the character creation process did you start looking at this? So you talked about how you started by wanting to be a Slayer.
Yep.
When did this come in, and did it then change earlier decisions you'd made in the character creation?
I looked at backgrounds before culture in this. I looked at backgrounds before cultures. I'd had a very, very loose idea in my head that Karhu was a fighter, but I didn't really have a cemented story.
Mm-hmm.
As soon as I read Doomed to Die, that sparked something in my head, and I started coming up with a story. And this created Karhu.
Wow.
Which, yeah, is why I love the background so much. I think they're incredible.
So the backgrounds give you a couple of things. You get skill proficiencies, so for Doom to Die, athletics and intimidation, which
I think you also got from Slayer and also got from being a Beorning as options, which is quite funny. You sort of doubled down on all this.
So it fits in neatly
Yeah.
together. They all come with a feature of some kind, which is normally a sort of soft buff of some kind. Dark foreboding. You don't know the hour or manner of your death, but you do have effectively a sixth sense. And that's something really relies on the lore master.
Yeah, I don't know if I remembered about that. It's quite weird. Like, I guess there's one way you can stick your hand up and be like, I have this dark foreboding feature, does it come up? And you've got this sort of the heightened awareness from being a Slayer as well.
I think it synergizes.
So it kind of synergizes as well.
Yeah.
You know, sort of, you know, you just have this sense that this is something terrible is going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
But there's quite a lot of overlap between different characters and different abilities.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes it can be quite hard to unpick exactly what it is. So, like, yeah, sometimes I find when abilities are this vague, I actually, this is a bit of like a metagame to admit, but like, if something's really vague and depends on the role master, it actually puts me off taking it, because I'm like, I'd rather have something mechanical that I know will definitely come up.
Interesting.
Which is weird. But
It's weird, it's just interesting.
Yeah. So
No, I
it's like thieves' cant. I'm just like, oh, that's never gonna, that's never gonna be important. So
yeah, it puts that huge onus on your lore master or dungeon master or whoever to really do that thing, and to make the decision on your own to take it. Yeah, and it feels like a risk.
Anyway, so I'm not just dumping on dark foreboding, but mainly because I'm trying to cover up for the fact that I kind of forgot about it.
I genuinely think it just synergizes with the vigilant senses thing. So I've never thought you've forgotten about it.
Okay, that's good. Go away with it. Should
never
have said that. I should not.
I should not have said that. The other thing, or things that you get from your background, are a distinctive quality, a specialty, hope, and a despair. Now, you can roll. There are tables for each of the backgrounds. You can roll. Did you roll, or did you pick?
I picked for Karhu.
Okay, so what do we go for? What about distinctive quality? There are 8 to choose from. Maybe we could just go through the ones you chose.
I chose Hardened. Part of the reason that you have accepted your fate is that you have seen too much death and misfortune already. It's your turn.
Okay. Evocative straight off the bat.
Yeah.
Okay.
Wow.
And that helped inform some of the backstory that's to come?
Yeah.
I imagine. Okay.
Massively, yeah.
Next one is specialty. Was this another one that you...
I believe I chose every one for Karhu. The specialty is Dark Secrets. I have recognised the shadow of influence, and am certain that its advance is what has sealed my fate.
Oh, okay.
Oh dear.
Well, it really is ominous, isn't it?
Yeah, it's pretty heavy.
Well, fortunately, the next one is hope.
Hope.
What's Karhu's hope?
I think I chose this one as well. Even when things seem hopeless, I know that this is not the death I see.
Interesting.
Oh, that's interesting. So you know you're doomed to die, but this isn't it. This is how you know you're going to go in a tragic penguin-related act. It's actually you're invincible.
My one weakness: penguins.
It's really changed the tone of the campaign for me. I have this insight into Callum's brain. And despair is the final one, just to bring things back down to a gloomy finish.
This one I also chose, and again because I thought it was the most depressing. I know that when things are at their bleakest, I shall be standing alone.
Wow. Okay, so that gives us a fairly bleak picture of Karhu's his background and kind of who he is underneath the kind of the mechanics of it. Was this the point then that the backstory came in?
This sparked the wannabe fantasy author in me. This sparked that part of my brain. Like, right,
good.
okay.
So when the role playing starts, okay, good.
So this sparked. Okay, you were the eldest of 3 siblings. They're dead. You had a mother and a father. They're dead. You had aunts and uncles, cousins that you named all of them.
Oh really? Wow.
Named all of them.
Yeah.
They're all dead. To Karhu's knowledge, at that time.
Uh-huh.
Every single one of them was dead, and started to progress that story of, okay, why would that be the case? Well, the Battle of the Five Armies was not that long ago. Your dad and your uncle went to go and fight, but you weren't old enough, so you were told, stay home, protect everyone, and you failed. Band of orcs came through. Karhu wasn't strong enough to stop them. Got knocked out within a second. He woke up. Everyone else was either gone or dead. So his fury that he has is at himself. It's not at the outside world.
So with these qualities, these features, and a couple of the mechanics that you chose, you went from really just kind of numbers and rules into
Character.
Very clearly defined character, quite flawed character with quite clear motivations.
Yeah.
Wow. This must have been a gift for you as well, then, as a lore master.
Such a gift. And the names of the characters will come back to, but like, it was a really great backstory, because the first couple of sessions we did were pre-written modules, so I don't think that came up, and everybody that made characters gave me a lot to build off. And I think that is my main advice as a lore master, is if you want the story to be engaging, kind of get people to, like, you did that without prompting, and I didn't need to ask anything. And I think part of that might have been that we were in lockdown, so we all had a lot of time to think about this.
Yep. Yeah.
But I think, if we were going to do it again, and we've talked about this with Elleras, who was a character that Scott took on when Karhu wasn't able to go to Gundabad. It's one of the bits of the campaign that we did, like a session 0 to create the character together and work on it.
Amazing.
It's so good. So I think I don't know what would have changed if we'd worked on Karhu together. Probably not much, because it's something like you had a really. I think I would have just been sitting there and been like, yeah, great. Yeah, you want to call him Grim? Yeah, okay, that seems very convenient for me. Thank you very much. So good when you're given a backstory which is rich and full, but not constraining. Like it wasn't anything like, I'm the most important person, everyone knows me, blah blah blah. It was like, this has happened to me, and this is how I am, who I am.
Yeah. Yeah, and going forward, it was every combat, I want to die.
So it was just throw yourself in and
throw in with literally reckless abandon. Like reckless, every attack you can. Let the enemies hit you with advantage, because you just want someone to be good enough to kill you.
Oh, wow. So you said this was the first time you'd played a role-playing, tabletop role-playing game.
Yeah.
I think that's one of the big challenges for players, is trying to, when you first start, is that idea of this character maybe makes decisions that I wouldn't. I'm trying to be in character, maybe making different decisions. Having such a well-constructed backstory, did that make it easier then for you? Do you think you were able to?
I think it made it a lot easier for me to be quite a cautious person in real life. I overthink a lot of things, so to be able to think in his mindset of don't think, act, was really freeing.
Yeah.
It was incredibly freeing to be able to just be so different to who I am in real life. Don't think about it. Your intelligence modifier is 0.
Just crack on.
There is danger over there. Run at it. Hit it before it can hit you. And that, for a very long time during our game, was how Karhu was.
And I think both from a character point of view, it's very compelling for me as a fellow player or audience member watching. It's very compelling. He's a very driven character, very clear. He's nothing like who I am in real life. It's very clear motivation, which is not always. It's quite flawed because it's very dangerous. I actually think also in a meta perspective, it's very engaging, because you naturally drove us to do things.
Yeah.
Because you would run in, or you would attack someone, or jump over something, and I think that helped drive often the party forwards.
That was so much fun for me, because it is that thing of gamers. You're like, okay, how can we optimally approach the situation? And I'm like, Scott is like, oh yeah, let's do that. And then Karhu in there goes, fuck that. There's an enemy over there. He doesn't know you're there. Hit him in the back of the head.
And it was so helpful for us as a party, I think, to just give us forward. It's like a big boulder, and it just gave us forward momentum all the time.
Yeah. And it also gave reasons for roleplay, because sometimes that was worked out really well, sometimes it didn't work out well, and it became this thing where actually the party members would talk to Karhu and say nobody was ever don't do, I think the group is good and nobody's ever going to turn around and say you can't roleplay like that, you're doing it wrong.
Yeah.
So it became an in-character discussion. That AiME or Karhu thing that we discussed earlier on about how do we work as a group? And so I guess that was how Karhu started out. What was the first things that you found changing or moving? What? Because I guess the Karhu that we have now, after 60 odd sessions or so, it's totally different. So let's just kind of go through the major events, maybe a highlight reel of Karhu moments that led you to change. Yeah, I know that's sort of changing the order of how we normally ask these questions, but I wonder if it.
No, this I think you're spot on, because Karhu has evolved massively.
Yeah.
The first influence on Karhu was Daedric, because he didn't have a dad. So
of course, yeah.
To have an older Beorning who Karhu respected, give him words of wisdom occasionally. Sometimes he listened, sometimes he didn't. That was the first step, and then travelling with Torvald and Runin. You have people you care about.
Mm-hmm.
You've never had that before, or not for a very long time. Maybe it's not the best idea to run into battle and get yourself killed because these people rely on you.
Yeah. So I suppose that introduces that inner conflict for you of wanting to look after your friends, but also being very driven to be a risk taker. And
the single biggest story moment for Karhu was running from the city of the Aethed. That chase.
Yes.
We got to a very narrow valley, and we ended on a cliffhanger in that session. And I genuinely, for however long we had in between that game and the next one, was this is it. Karhu's going to die. I'm going to stand in this opening. I'm going to tell everyone else to run. And I'm going to go out in a blaze of glory. I'm going to kill as many of the bastards as I can. And then I'm going to die. And that didn't happen. And for most of that session, I was in free fall in my head going, what? I'm not dead. What is going on? You were supposed to die. This doesn't make any sense. And from that point onward, Karhu really changed, completely evolved, and was okay, maybe you don't have to die. Maybe you can have a life and not be stuck in the past.
That's fascinating. I really remember that, because that sense of, we're definitely all going to... I had the sense we were all going to die in the situation, which I think we've spoken about before. The wargs had trapped us in that gully. It's interesting that from Karhu's perspective, because you had this sense the whole way through the character's life, that you were like, this is that moment that I've always thought about has arrived.
Yeah, this is it. And no, it wasn't. And then through the amazing story that Callum provided for us, Karhu evolved.
Yeah.
In so many ways.
So at some point we changed. You came to me and asked to change your background.
Yeah.
When was that?
I think after he met his sister.
Should we talk about that?
Yeah, let's talk about that then.
Yeah.
So that was fast forward quite a way through. There's been a lot of development, and the party composition has changed. Although Karhu, along with Runin and Torvald, have been with the party pretty much throughout. And then we got to a point where we were fighting, or we were investigating something back in the Vale of Anduin. Beorn had given us some tips as well, or some kind of threads to investigate of Volter the Bloody.
Yeah.
Who is another figure which at the time we really didn't have a great deal of information, but seemed to be in some way linked to the Beornings or Beorn's past. That he was evil. It was implied that he was a slaver, and there'd been violence. And we went to explore that area, but we didn't really know a great deal about it.
Yeah, I think you then figured out that you'd come across that group, when very early on, when he'd gone to the city of the Aethed and he crossed the the river. Because like when you had the adventure and there was bandits in the road, like that was just they were sort of just. When I did that at the beginning, it was like they were just bandits.
Yeah.
They were brigands. They were at this, they were just there. But I often found that like sometimes when stuff like that happens, I reflected. I was like, so who were they? Like, why were they there? Who were they working with? And there's a lot of inspiration within the Rovanian Region Guide about like the different people that are in the valley. And there's two people, Volta the Bloody and Vigland. And I kind of didn't really like the idea of having too many. I feel like it's like a smorgasbord of inspiration in the book, and I kind of just took what I liked and mashed it together. So I came up with Volta the Bloody, which I won't go into too much detail about because you've not quite finished that arc yet.
No.
But well, I guess maybe I'll just ask you, Scott, what your thoughts on like what happened and how you came to find out this person is your sister and what you know, rather than me accidentally spoiling something.
I think if I remember correctly, we were trying to get across an old collapsed bridge.
Yes.
And someone started shooting at us.
Mm-hmm.
And Karhu being Karhu, enemy, Warhammer, face, and took off after them. She was able to match him for speed, so we started to get really far away from everyone else. And she eventually stopped, and we had a tough fight. That is one of the closest times Karhu has been to death. And I eventually won. And I remember you describing her whilst I was about to like raise the hammer for the killing blow. And I honestly can't remember what it was that you said that twigged it, but I was like, oh my god, this is my sister.
I think it was that she wore a ring or
Yes.
something. Because you'd very clearly, when you described your character to me, you had the shield and it had this symbol on it. You know, is it a bear?
It's a bear's head. Yeah.
Bear's head. And I think what it was that she had some piece of... I think it was a ring or something similar that was very similar.
Mm-hmm.
And it just sort of... You know, and I think I was like slowly dropping in hints.
Yeah.
Because I knew who this was, and I knew that it was your sister, and I didn't want to put you in a situation where you'd find out later on that, because I think that might be quite a character breaking situation to find out you accidentally killed someone that you know with your religion to.
Yeah.
Without I guess you weren't ill intentioned. So yeah, and then I guess then what happened?
Karhu had a bit of a meltdown. Like, everything that he thought was true wasn't. He's not the only one of his family left alive. His sister's still here. What happened to them? He'd never questioned that, ever. He was just like, oh, they're dead. What does it matter how they died? You didn't stop it. Well, now you know one of them's not dead. Maybe others aren't dead. Where's she been all this time? Why did she attack you? Is she working with Volta? So I had this sort of inner spiral of all these things, so we captured her and took her back to camp and questioned her.
Yeah, had a very intense role-playing session, really, where predominantly Karhu, but all the characters were kind of asking her questions and put you as a lore master kind of on the spot. There was a lot.
I think that was one of the best role-playing sessions that we've had, or at least maybe it wasn't, but like it was the time of all the NPCs, like maybe apart from Radagast, that I like. It wasn't like the most like joy. It was quite like a serious, really serious roleplay session, all roleplay. But I feel like I really got into her head. Like I really understood her motivations and the ideas behind that character and how she was, where she was, and like, you know, having been in a similar upbringing to Karhu, who I understood really well, and then having been essentially abducted and then indoctrinated and brought up in this lifestyle and had subscribed to this idea that like strength was everything, and you know, it was all about being powerful and strong, and the weak deserved their fate, etc. And it was almost like I felt like when we were role playing it, there was some parallels to modern day in terms of, you know, some well-known figures in society that advocate for this sort of thing and how repulsive it is. And so we had this really interesting role play, and it was not that much rolling, I don't think.
No, hardly any at all.
But it was, it felt, I don't know, how did you feel? What do you remember from that session?
I remember Torvald asking a lot of more questions about Voltaire, like thinking about it, and Karhu was, I need to find out if you're my sister. So brought up things that he remembered from his childhood in the book of flowers that their father kept, and what their mother wore, the songs she used to sing to them, which I have since written a lullaby, which I don't think I've used in the game yet. And trying to connect to the person he used to know, which was incredible. Like that was amazing.
And it's also like you're the oldest sibling, so she was younger at that time, so and I had repressed memories.
Yeah.
So it was, I think there maybe was some rolling involved on her behalf. There was some roles in there, and it was amazing because you kind of took this person from being really indoctrinated, really set in their belief, to suddenly question. And it wasn't like an overnight, like, oh, my brother, like there was still quite a few sessions before there was an acceptance, but it felt really pivotal for her, but also for Karhu in terms of like, here's a family member. And I guess, just to lay out slightly, like, so Voltaire, the idea is that there's this very charismatic leader, and almost like the antithesis to Beorn on the other side of the river, and essentially someone that has known to Beorn and has had this like long time in the Anjin Vale and has a very different leadership style and has a different set of values, and how that conflicts with what Beorn has taught kind of like brought more into focus what the Beornings were about. I guess you kind of best way to examine something is to contrast it with something very different, I guess. So yeah, I thought, and it was really, I deliberately put that in because I wanted a way to explore your backstory, I have to say.
Yeah.
And when you gave me the family members, I was like, well, some of them are still alive.
Yeah.
Of course they are. You can't give me all this rich backstory and then be like, yeah, they're all dead, so they're never going to come up.
Yeah.
I was like, well, I have to do something of this. And so I was like, well, of course, someone might have been the orcs didn't kill it. You survived, so why wouldn't anybody else?
Yeah.
Maybe people have been captured or taken away. And then it allowed us to go, well, what do you remember? So we went to your, family home.
Yeah. Uncovered sort of family heirlooms that had been buried. That was the moment for me where I feel like she really believed it. I don't know if that's what it felt like for you, but for me, as Karhu, I was like, she finally sees that she is my sister, that I'm not just some weird guy wearing a warg skin that's telling her that you're my sister. It was like she's beginning to remember who she is.
Yeah.
And that was the point where Karhu was like, okay, now I really have something to live for.
Yeah.
And now I can be more than just a warrior. I need to be better for her. I need to become more. And that was the reason he didn't go to Gundabad with everyone else, was to stay with her.
Which became I think a big character decision for
Huge,
you, because while all this was happening was the same time as AiME has been looking for his uncle, which is a very long running plot, and you've done a good job as lore master kind of dropping in clues here and there. We'd kind of quite regularly interact with something that gave us a little bit more information to move the pursuit of Baron or AiME's uncle forward. We basically got enough information thinking he's further north from where your family's village was. Pretty confident if we go, we might be able to catch up with him or catch the trail. And you had the really difficult decision of saying, well, that Karhu wouldn't come with the party.
Yeah, it was really bold decision. And we I think there's a thing about what would my character do, but then you're also hampered a little bit sometimes with I want to keep playing the game. Yeah. So then we came up with bringing in an NPC that was there, and then you took over the NPC and built on the character that's in the book, and that worked so well. Elarath the Searcher is one of the characters in the book that I was like, yeah, this is cool, I'm going to use this one. and then to have that session where we need to have you back at some point and talk about Ellerast, who I actually thought it worked really well as a character. So yeah, Karhu changed and didn't come with the party.
Yeah.
What do you? I think you must have at some point switched your background. What did you switch it to?
We swapped it to Oathsworn, but kind of homebrewed it, because what's written for Oathsworn I didn't feel made all that much sense to Karhu.
No.
But this was another turning point for him where he was starting to embrace becoming the leader, and that his oath was sworn to not so much Beorn but his teachings and the land, and that he would do everything possible, including the biggest thing for him, changing himself, to live up to that oath and protect the Beornings and his land.
There was, I think, Beorn sort of, you saw Karhu change and you saw Beorn, Beorn clearly is looking for strong leaders, and he had Theodric. He was very different from Beorn, very, very different.
Yeah. And
Karhu was probably much more similar, or maybe he saw a young Beorn in him, I'm not sure. And I was slightly gently encouraging, as the lore master, to use a player through Beorn to say actually Karhu could be a leader. And when you didn't go to Gundabad, I think that was a big moment. And then I guess there was a bit of nourishing of that there. And then I guess Josh doesn't really know about this, but there was a session that we did just.
It was you, Stuart, and I.
Yeah, it was just the three of us.
Yeah.
Yeah. Karhu went on a pilgrimage of sorts.
And when did this happen? Kind of in the narrative overall, at what point?
This was before I met my sister, I believe.
Yeah.
But not long before.
Not long before. It was quite high level, done quite a lot of stuff. Beorn had seen some potential.
Yeah.
And basically said, I'm going. Were you going north, or you ran into him on the road? I think it was like a fellowship phase.
Yeah.
You were traveling. You were going to go back somewhere else. You were ruining, and you kind of basically. I'm going to say bumped into Beorn on the road, because that's not quite right, because there was a little bit of Beorn maybe did it deliberately, but the three of you ended up going, and he had an errand to complete and asked you to accompany him up somewhere called the Hoary Mountain, or the Gamelberg, which is a mountain that's in the book, and it's at the western end of the Iron Hills. That's the right one? No, that's the wrong one. The Grey Mountains.
Yeah.
Western of the Grey Mountains, just before they reach the Misty Mountains. What do you remember? It was a pretty. I really enjoyed running this, actually.
It was really tense. Karhu was Beorn wants something from me, specifically me, and this is important. And getting up the mountain was hard.
Yeah.
Considering Karhu's this huge beast of a man, much like I am. And he was he wants me to go up a mountain. This will be piss easy. Really hard.
Really difficult. And he could have failed quite a few times.
Yeah, it was really hard. It involved climbing things, jumping, feats of strength.
There's a big river that you had to do multiple crossings across. There was dexterity based stuff. And then you got to a point. Beorn basically was leading you, but didn't really help. He just sort of was going up on his own, and you were to follow if you could.
Yeah.
And I'd sort of fought it all out in advance, a skill challenge sort of approach. And then there was a bit where you had to jump. You had to do a leap of faith.
Yeah.
Faith? Do you remember that?
It was in
bit?
pitch darkness.
Yeah, that you came into a cave, followed Beorn, and it was pitch black. Couldn't see, great, not having night vision, and you just had to. You knew you had to jump. You could sense that there was a gap, but you didn't know how far, you didn't know where you were going to go.
Yeah.
And how did that feel?
Wow.
Considering I had changed, in my mind I was well, you're not really doomed to die anymore. You're jumping in pitch blackness into a space that you know nothing about. Terrifying, but at the same time, this for Karhu was, this is changing who you are. You are having faith in something more than your own strength. You're believing that something else will catch you. Jump. And terrifying. Absolutely terrifying.
He made it.
Yeah.
Spoilers. The bag. And there was a little bit more. There was a really strong wind coming down a passageway that you had to fight against, and this sort of spiritual aspect of it started to come in. And essentially, what you had to do to get through these challenges was to use up all your rages.
Yeah.
And so the idea here was that, like, you know, Karhu had developed, he was moving away from anger, and so you were being tested and trying to get rid of your anger. And you got to the top of the mountain, and you had this interaction with
AiME.
Wow.
So yeah, because one of the things that I was questioning a lot when I read the books, and it's got this, is that there is all this stuff about Beorn. Where does his power come from? It's clearly something about, and what I thought was, well, of all the Valar, who actually comes to Middle-earth and gets involved? AiME is seen hunting in Middle-earth. He's around. He does things. So if people don't know, he's one of the Valar, so like the sort of gods, I guess, or the sort of godlike figures, the most powerful beings. I don't know if god's the right term. And he comes to Middle-earth and he interferes, and he's quite active. So I didn't think it was unreasonable that he would be involved, and potentially that's where Beorn gets his power from. So that was just my imagination of it. That's no way lore or canon or anything. And I don't know how that felt as a player, but I really enjoyed running that.
That was like one of those like mind blown moments of stupid little Beorning is worthy of a being of this amount of power and influence, is looking and talking to me.
Yeah. I spent a lot of time thinking how to describe it and like give you that feeling. And I think Stuart was just sort of
sat
a witness. You never talked about it, which is great.
Yeah.
So I'm guessing some people listening from our game will be like, "What?"
Completely oblivious.
Yeah. And actually, Karhu failed the test.
Yep, I didn't pass.
He didn't pass the test.
Oh,
so a guess was put on you at that point, but I can't remember exactly what it was. He failed, like it was like one of the last. He passed so much, and I was like, he's going to do it. He's going to do it. He's going to get the guess.
I failed.
Get this power, and just. So I think you upgraded your bear thing. I gave you something for it. I think a feat or.
I think that's when I took Nightgore.
Yeah, you took Nightgore at that point. It's sort of like, how does this come up? And I actually think you told me. I think this is what happened. You told me you wanted to take that feat.
Yeah.
And I was like, why would you just suddenly be able to travel through the night with your feet in the
spiritual bear?
So this is so then that's where I got the inspiration to do it. I kind of thought this at some point, and coming forward from there to open up my behind the DM screen completely. As soon as you said that your father was called Grim, Fast, and you were from the village Grim, I was like, well, the heir to Beorn is Grimbeorn. So Karhu is going to be the heir to Beorn. And I had that idea right at the beginning of the campaign. I was like, I hope he survives, because this could be really, and like, I think it's like is it actually I can't really imagine. I was like, the other thing was I can't really imagine Beorn like settling down and having a family.
Yeah.
I just really struggled with that.
Yeah, that didn't really fit with.
Yeah, so I was like, well, maybe it makes more sense to just like adopt someone.
Yeah.
The son that's like the heir. So as soon as I had that idea, I was slightly nudging narratives toward that, hoping that he would survive. So that's where you were, and then others came back from Gundabad. I guess, how did we get to where we are now, which is...
Well, quite a lot. Like the Gundabad arc took a long time.
Huge,
yeah.
Both as out of character playing and in character. Effectively took a. We went to Gundabad just
it's like
before,
winter and spring.
It was just before winter, and effectively we then ended up wintering at Rivendell. So it was months that Karhu was not part of the main party, and you played Elras.
Yeah.
So in game, a lot of time had passed, and we had no idea what Karhu was up to. We spoke about it in character a lot, of like, because we knew why you'd stayed, and you had the sense of duty and everything, but we had no idea what was changing with Karhu while we were away.
Yeah.
So that was quite exciting.
Yeah, he came back. He was very different. Did you feel different when you came back?
Yes, very much so. Had you, during that time, decided what was going on with Karhu?
We talked a few times.
Yeah, we did. Yeah.
So spent a lot of time with his sister.
Yeah.
Spent a lot of time with Beorn. which is why Karhu was so different with Beorn.
Because he was very different with Beorn, and that was going to be one of my questions. Was having you said at the beginning you were aware of Karhu was aware of Beorn, but wouldn't have spoken to him because he was this strong figure, and you were just a young man. And then over time, role played, and he knew who you were, and knew who he was. But then he was actually quite a fallible person. Was some of that rooted in when you found out about your sister?
Partly, and then in conversations that we didn't have, but talked about what would have happened with him. Beorn started telling Karhu his story, which directly influenced Karhu, and there was a lot changed. Karhu, a lot of his opinions about his own failings, that wasn't your fault, it was his. And he wants you to be leader, so you have to be better than him.
Yeah.
Beorn was pretty let his guard down and was really honest with, and I think I'm not sure how Karhu feels about him now, but I got the sense at times that Karhu had kind of lost patience with Beorn, because he was he's so idealized, and then he was I've been trying to do my best as a leader, but these are things I messed up. We went to this battle, a lot of people died, I blame myself for that. Beorn blames himself. Came back, people had died at home because he wasn't there to defend them, blames himself for that. And then Volter the Bloody was someone that he knew and had never really addressed because of fear of repercussion, so blames himself for that. And then your family had been captured and sort of raised in this way by Volter and subverted, and he blames himself because he couldn't act on that, because he was feared that if he tried to do something, Volter would just kill them. Essentially, they were hostages. Essentially, Volter really had Beorn in a place where strength couldn't just go in and deal with it, but also wouldn't tell you about it because he knew up until very recently, and that's when he was able to tell you all this. He knew that if he told you, you just run in and try and kill them, and then you just would screw up everything. Yeah. And I hope that Karhu can come to forgive Beorn for all that, because Beorn, I was just feeling how would he be managing this? And he was just trying to do his best. And it was so at odds with maybe how you'd viewed Beorn at the beginning.
Totally different. Yeah. Completely opposite to what Karhu thought of Beorn.
And also what he valued, because there was a whole plot line which was one of the people who was a Beorning, this guy called Rafik, challenged Theodric for leadership of Stonyford because he wasn't strong enough. And it's sort of challenging the idea that what we see as Beorn being really strong, and that's a core value of the Beornings. But actually, here's a situation where Beorn was forced into where strength couldn't solve it, and actually, there wasn't an easy solution, and that was really difficult for him. And then Karhu came in and had sort of seen Beorn being so strong, and suddenly he was quote unquote weak in the situation because he was powerless to do anything.
Yeah.
That's a real challenge for your viewpoint of someone who was so idealized.
Yeah, I think Karhu's his relationship with Beorn is already better than it was, but when you guys came back, there's definitely still tension.
Yeah, and it did feel like that, and Karhu felt slightly more distant, but not in a distant from us, more in a kind of I think maybe your eyes had been opened to lots more what's going on, and the troubles that you had went from being what the party was up to adventuring to actually kind of big existential stuff about who Karhu was, and actually some of our kind of adventures probably went from being a big thing in your life to that's kind of secondary to what I'm dealing with.
We actually did a different a spin-off game, sort of one shot, where Karhu had gone after Rafik, who was this sort of traitorous person who'd been he basically come through the valley and burned beehives. We talked about the beehives at Stonyford. So he'd come in under the direction of Volter and burned beehives, and Karhu went chasing after him, and the other players played some kind of woodmen that were exiled.
Yeah.
And anything interesting happened there?
Yeah.
It's a leading question.
Karhu went chasing after Rafik into the woods. And heard a hunting horn, if I remember correctly, and got the urge to run towards it, and again needed to use his rage to push through certain struggles going towards this thing. And met AiME for a second time. And this time passed the test.
Okay, yes.
And gained the ability to turn into a mighty bear.
Because for that session, I was in that spin-off session, and we did see this, but had no context for what had happened before.
Yeah. Did I show you you were listening and hearing, or did we go?
We
whispered
separately.
We went separately, so you didn't know what happened.
Know what happened, but you
No.
maybe described it a bit.
I described Karhu charging off,
Uh-huh.
and then when I came back, much louder noise.
Yes.
Something much bigger.
Oh,
was
yeah,
coming
I loved
towards you through the trees.
And you'd been hunting. You knew the reason for the mission, essentially, that the woodmen were there, was that there was this kind of strange creature. Oh, that was it. Yeah. So the three woodmen characters, or three, had gone into the forest. They had met a character whose name Mogdred, who's in the books, and he tasked them with hunting down this werewolf, who was actually a werewolf that you'd encountered.
Yeah, much
like
earlier.
very, very early in the campaign. Brought them back, and then so when this thing came charging through the woods,
Yeah, we definitely assumed it
you was that, and that was definitely what I was trying to do. And
We were
it was,
terrified.
and it was Karhu who was a bear,
Yeah.
and I just loved
Yeah.
that sort of like throwing off your expectations.
It worked very well. Yeah. I was terrified that we were all going to get killed by a werewolf, and then it was
Yeah.
you as a bear.
And yeah, Karhu's rage has totally changed now.
Yeah, we homebrewed the rules for that, which I took inspiration from a little bit from Wild Shape, a little bit from like Totem Barbarian. Don't know do we have the rules around somewhere? I don't really know.
Online, I don't have it written out.
Yeah.
I think.
I think essentially it was like I gave you the ability to communicate with bears.
Yep.
Gave you like natural weapon attacks.
Yep.
I think you're like
My strength's gone up by 2, I
Yeah.
believe. Yeah.
Yeah, and there was a couple of most of it wasn't like I don't think it made you that much more
No.
powerful.
No.
I think you maybe got some temporary hit points or something as well, or maybe not. Karhu doesn't really need any extra hit points, but like just a lot of stuff would be like what would make sense for a bear, basically, and gave you some like perception bonuses and stuff
I
like
think
that.
so, yeah.
Yeah.
I can see in the dark as a bear. Which is
Oh
nice.
yeah, night vision.
Which is quite a big deal in Adventures in the
It's
West.
huge.
Yeah,
Yeah, that was amazing. And like, yeah, changing the rage to almost like a sense of calm, which from like creating him, he was all built on rage, and having that total flip was like such a lovely moment of catharsis. It was just like, oh wow.
I love like hearing about your ideas at the beginning and how you wanted a simple character. And just, and like I think it was to show that when you create a character, you never know where they're going to end up, and like having room in your backstory, being open and willing as a player to change the character, and as a lore master or DM, listening to your players. Like when you came to me and said, "I want to change my background," like yes, like that makes so much sense.
Yeah.
Or like, this ability doesn't really make any sense. Let's adjust it.
Yeah.
And let's collaborate on characters that make sense of what we want to role play. Like we talked before about like that balance between like there are rules, but you also want to role play, and if the rules are getting in the way of the role playing, then change them.
Yes.
And I think that same goes for your character sheet. It's not set in stone. You might write on it in the sheet in pen. Maybe you should write on it in pencil.
That's a good lesson.
So yeah, now we've got to a stage where Karhu's become essentially Grimbeorn, which I think kind of makes sense in our lore. You know that Grimbeorn the Old is the leader of the Beornings at the time Lord of the Rings. So
Karhu is 24.
yeah, he'll be pretty old.
Yeah.
But that makes sense, and it
Well, I mean,
fits
he's
in the
already
name.
met AiME twice, and he's in his 20s, and he can transform into a bear. So I think a little bit of old age is probably believe it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
maybe he'll get to level 20 whilst you off and do some other campaign.
I've loved talking about Karhu because I've said this to you before. I have always thought that our campaign was Karhu's story from the very beginning, and I think it's partly because I played Phaedric, and I was very aware that I was going to only be in temporarily as Phaedric, and that was something we'd kind of agreed. and he didn't have family of his own. He kind of saw Karhu as the other Beorning as almost like a son. He wanted to give you advice. He really wanted you to then to go off and do things. So I think maybe just in my head I was like, well, the camera will now follow Karhu. That's like the story. And it always felt that whatever the adventures we had, that Karhu's the character who developed the most. Like you changed very much from the character you started as. Yeah. And I felt throughout it was your story, and these were our bits were the bits that shaped you along the way. But the plot followed Karhu. And I actually thought then the moment where you chose not to go to Gundabad was then huge and really changed my perception of our game, because I was like, well, this is Karhu's story. So when we go to Gundabad with my character, it's almost like a spin-off series. Like the main story is actually going in a different direction, and it did. It was. I actually think the main plot was you and Bjorn and your sister and what's going to happen with Volter, which for a while the party wasn't involved in. And I really like that our whole campaign's been framed through Karhu started as this simple angry person. He's going to end up as this mythical leader of his people. And the rest of us players were your friends on the way.
Although
you kind of contributed to.
There's sort of two main stories, I would say. There's been Karhu stories and there's been Helmer's story. And they're probably the two main stories. I don't know why that is. You can never really unpick exactly how it is. Part of it will be to do with the characters you came up with. Part of it to do with the quest that I laid on the road. And it could have just as easily been Runen and Torvald or one of the other characters that became the main story. And actually, some of the other characters that have come in, when we've designed them, linked into the story.
Yes, I think
which has been really fun. Like Bert's character, Dior, is so linked to Halmir's story.
Yes.
And it was really great to collaborate on building someone. So you don't need to have one main story. And that was very deliberate. You kind of want everyone to feel like the main character, but then maybe don't need to do that.
I think it's just the way I see things. I don't think it's that the game's not been balanced. I just, in my head, that's how the narrative has been. And I actually think it gives it a lot of. I find it really satisfying because your character, I think, has developed a lot. So it feels that the campaign and the story has developed a lot. And I think Karhu will be stepping off the stage soon. It's kind of, I don't know.
Well, I guess in terms of our journey in Antivale, we've gone there. We've done a lot of high levels. We're in this really tense moment now where there's attacks and the woodmen coming and a lot of conflict, and we're sort of wrapping up this leg of our campaign, and I've got plans for other things to run. So I think potentially that will be the end of Karhu's story. But I guess for other people playing, what hopefully you've taken from there some ideas or inspirations, your own characters for games you can run. But I think one of the things there is how do we get from Bjorn on his own to Bjorn leading his people to then, the Time Lord of the Rings, Grimbeorn leading this large group of hardy people.
Yeah.
What are the stories? So Grimbeorn must come from someone, and you can do different ways of doing that. But maybe you've got a Beorning player, and maybe they could be the next Grimbeorn. Who knows?
Yeah. I mean, I've loved it. It's been incredible.
And all of that came from being doomed to die at the beginning.
Yeah, that all stemmed from that background.
D to D.
D to D.
Yeah, one thing I was thinking, we were talking there, whether you were talking about the main stories, is that Karhu's the local hero, and Calmir's the out of local hero. I was just thinking back to that episode where we just dropped the local hero theme tune. Maybe we should play that again?
Okay.
Well, what a lovely piece of music.
Yep.
What a delightful way to finish the episode. Scott, thank you so much for coming on to talk to us about Karhu.
Karhu? Karhu.
I will almost certainly have to be back on to talk about...
Sorry, I made that joke so many times in game.
We will almost certainly have to be back on to talk about how things wrap up, because it does feel we're right on the cusp of
Yeah, once we've wrapped it up. Where the epilogue of that arc. Yeah. And also talk about Elleras, because he's another terrifying character.
Yeah, I really enjoyed playing him too. Scary in a different way.
No emails except on party business. And comments, suggestions, and questions to thefellowshipphase@gmail.com. The long year turns to its close. Much we have accomplished these last seasons. Our fellowship disbands, but is not broken, and we will return.
On the next episode of The Fellowship Phase.